Hello and welcome to Mostly Minnesota Music Podcast Edition. I'm Ann Tracy. I'm here with my co-host
Heather Baker.
Yes, and we are with Diegetic. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. You know those? Is it Vogue magazine does like 73 questions? I'm very tempted to ask you 73 questions in a row because you have so many interesting things that you do.
Well, you're going to regret that because I get a little long-winded when I answer.
That's okay. I don't often ask this, but I'm going to ask right away because diegetic music was something I was new to me. So I'm going to ask you to just start by telling folks what it is and how you came to that name.
Yeah. The honest answer, and I think this is the answer that most bands would have if they were truly honest, is that it sounded like a cool word. But I came up with the word, so the word means, inside of a film. So usually you refer to like diegetic sound as sound that is happening in like the plot of a film. So if there's a song playing on the radio in a movie, that's diegetic sound, right? And I was never much of a film buff, but when I went to grad school, I ended up having to take a film class and just got super into film criticism and found it so much more interesting. And that word, for whatever reason, from that class was like the one word that just stuck in my head. And so, it sounded like a cool word to me. So now it's my band name. But, of course, my real name is Kevin, but musically I go by Diegetic.
I had to fill out a form today and they said, tell us something you recently learned. Awesome. Diegetic. I just think I'm going to slip it into conversation like Groucho Marx for the next, be my magic word of the day.
Yeah, guaranteed. If you go to, you're watching the next Marvel film and you comment on the diegetic sound in it, you're going to really impress the people you're with. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. And I especially like, there are so many levels to what you do, and you have an album, you have work coming out tomorrow, The Lonely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So The Lonely is coming out tomorrow, and that's kind of a shift in direction for me musically. It's a instrumental sort of post-rock album, but I wanted to do like a concept album. So it's actually, like most people in the last year, like in the early days of the pandemic, I got really into binge watching TV. And I was binge watching like The Twilight Zone, and there's an episode called The Lonely. And at the time I was like trying to come up with my next sort of like musical project. And I wanted to do sort of a spacey sounding, like kind of throwbacky sounding, album. And, there's this episode of The Twilight Zone, and it's about this guy and he gets banished for some crime that he did. He gets banished to a faraway planet and he's all alone. And, I just took that and thought that story was really inspirational for the sort of sound I wanted to go with. So the album has kind of, these sort of dark, distant sounds to it and kind of some old sort of synth sounds to it. And kind of almost like throwback kind of metal vibes in places and things like that. Yeah.
It felt like it was sort of the diegetic music of what he would have heard through this journey. So I just loved about it.
That's great. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of ambient music. Straight up through harsh noise and some of that stuff. And there's more ambient than harsh noise here, but I love the sound of it, and I love how when it starts. It starts with kind of the most human sounding voice, which I pretend is the judge saying you're banished.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I was really, this is my first time trying something like this, so I didn't know how effective I was. So it's really encouraging to hear that. But I was trying to capture sort of those plot points of it. And, the song titles kind of give away the plot points of it. But yeah, that first song, it's called, The End of a War, Banishment. And it's supposed to be, this person who, was responsible for this horrible war is banished to a faraway planet. And yeah, so it starts with those kind of angry sort of low growling synthesizer noises before the guitars come in. And yeah, I did want to give it sort of that sort of like judgmental, like, you know, banishment feeling before sort of the more human sounding guitars and things came in.
Well, and I can't even believe I didn't pick up on the Twilight Zone, because they have a Twilight Zone every New Year's Eve, and I've several years in a row that's been my New Year's Eve with a child who was maybe at times too young for it. But once, now that you say that, it has that Twilight Zone feel, that the Twilight Zone version of wah 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 from the Peanuts, you know, that kind of And then the album ends really with static, like radio static, just right out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the last song. And, you know, it's called Signal Lost, Forgotten Prison. And it's supposed to be that, you know, his sentence was commuted and, you know, he gets to return to Earth. He just has to send signal of where he is. And for whatever reason, his beacon doesn't work and he cannot reach it. So, I mean, it's so sort of a B movie sort of, you know, you know, grindhouse sort of movie plot, which I think makes it kind of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. So, you know, the end of it is sort of the static taking over the song. And there's kind of those very distant, fast guitars through the whole thing, sort of giving this kind of sort of radio sound wave feeling to it. Yeah.
I mean, it just made me think of so many things, because the other kind of in the space age realm is, I'm like, this is like Major Tom's grandson.
Oh, funny. Well, that's probably higher praise than is deserved. I won't say that I was like totally inspired by that, but that is a cool connection. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's how David Bowie would do it today. You know, I mean, it's all that sort of, and then just to bring us to even a level of, I don't know if darker or not, we don't have to go too far, but it's difficult. Well, hearing it now, sitting in my house in the Twin Cities in the middle of the Chauvin trials, it's hard not to bring in some of that aspect of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't, you know, I won't say that was like where I went with it, but, you know, I did start working on this, you know, in the spring kind of, and, you know, there was a lot, you know, around, you know, the horrible killing of George Floyd, and around, you know, the early days of the pandemic, and around, you know, the social, you know, unrest that followed all that. You know, there was certainly my mental like state was affected by that. You know, I used to live in Minneapolis. I live in Duluth now. And I have friends still living in Minneapolis. And, you know, I did feel very, at the time, and as I was kind of starting to work on this even, I did feel very like cut off, because, you know, I had friends that were going to the protests and who were very involved and were showing up, you know, bringing food and cleaning up Lake Street and things like that. And I was here in Duluth like, well, you know, I can't be there. And, you know, I wouldn't want to drive down and stay with them because there's a pandemic. But so, you know, there is a lot of, you know, personal frustration, I think, on the album, not directly related to that, but just the whole vibe of the last year sort of lends itself to that, doesn't it?
Did you, I was just going to ask, did you already have that concept figured out before? Or you said you wanted to do a concept album, but did you have?
Yeah, well, so, and I'm sure we'll touch on this in a bit, but yeah, I had kind of the way that I started this musical project was of Diegetic was doing more like electronic and sort of music. But in the past, I had always made, like when I was younger, I was in rock bands. So I really wanted to get back to that. But so I was like, I want to make, you know, a more guitar driven thing. So I want it to sound, you know, a lot of what I listen to is like sort of post rock. So I wanted it to be in there. And I had like a few ideas that I was like kind of fiddling around with on my guitar, but I didn't have like the actual concept and like the whole inspiration. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but it was like I had a couple song sketches that just felt very like disconnected from anything. And then sometime in that Twilight Zone binge, it clicked, and then I could kind of like tie the sounds I wanted to get in there together.
You, when you're working on your music, you seem like you kind of have a plan, or sort of, like your other stuff is flipping fascinating also, but even when you're talking about this, it's like you almost have to have the whole sum and then you put it together rather than piecing it together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my creative process, like other musicians, probably better musicians than me, would probably like laugh at my creative process. I think. I don't know. So I work full time, and I also currently go to law school. So I am kind of really busy. So, when I make music, it's usually like I'm fitting it in an hour a day, or, an hour at a time here and there. So it's like very rare that I can like sit down and like write a whole song in one sitting. It's like, this is a fun part, I'll save that. This is a fun part, I'll save that. This is a fun part, and I put them together later. So to answer your question, I find that having kind of a unifying like thesis or plan at the start helps me, take these pieces and not make like something that just sounds like 30 15-second song ideas strung together, but I can say like, does this serve kind of the larger thesis? So if I start with that and then bring the ideas in, it usually works better.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and I know you hear like songwriters will be like, yeah, I just sat down and, the song just came to me, I just wrote it in, a half hour, an hour or something. That sounds really amazing. I'd like that to happen to me sometime. But it hasn't yet.
Do you have like a little list of to check off of ideas that you have twirling around, or is it just all of a sudden it comes to you and you're like, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting now, with all your time you have?
I think for me, it's like, and I think this is a common musician trope, is it's like the text message drafts, I just have those. But really, it's like, most of what I do is like, I just record my ideas. So I just have like, 100 separate little starts of songs recorded on my computer. And most of them get lost into the ether, I guess. And then the ones that I actually like remember to go back to are the ones that become songs. And I guess that's like a good way to weed out the really bad ideas, at least. But yeah, so I just have like 100 songs that are like quarter finished, that who knows if I'll ever do anything with them.
And they might get mashed up,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
never know.
Well, and that kind of happens sometimes. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I've just never been to like sit down and write a song all in one sitting person. I'm sure that you can learn to do that. Think that takes a certain kind of talent I don't have. I don't know, but
Well, I think it takes a schedule that you don't have.
that might be it too. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of work in the same way. Give me an hour, man, and I can get a day's worth.
Yeah, that's how it feels. Is just, I mean, and even just like working from home now, which I'm lucky to be able to do, but it does feel like every piece of work I do is done in like 30-minute increments here and there.
It would be interesting, and of course, you're the gateway of so much beauty up north. I mean, Duluth. I love Duluth, but you get to a Grand Marais, you get to some of the Grand Portage. It would be interesting to see if you spent a week in a day, a Saturday in a cabin. Whether that would be the best idea or the worst.
I don't know. I think that I would go crazy. I think that I am. You get used to like the busy schedule. It's something that I have to work on. But yeah, Duluth, I mean, as you said, Duluth is really pretty up here. And it is, I'm not from Duluth, but I went to school here. And then I moved, to Minneapolis. and obviously the music in Minneapolis is great. I love the music scene, but I really missed the lake, really missed the outdoors. So I brought myself back here. I couldn't stay away. So yeah, Duluth is a great place to be. And the music scene is pretty good here
Yep.
too. I mean, for the size of the city, I think that there's a lot going on. And, back when there was live shows and stuff, there was really like just a great diversity of live music here compared to like other cities of our size, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had the great fortune of talking to such a wide range of musicians from in Duluth.
Mhm.
You think there's a Duluth sound, but there's not.
Yeah, there's the joke of like, the Duluth folk musician. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think that that is like, there's something to that where like, if you go, I mean, not anymore, but it used to be if you would go to a bar any night of the week, there was like a 50% chance there would be someone singing Bob Dylan in the corner or something similar, which isn't a bad thing, but everyone's like Duluth is for folk musicians and that's it. But I mean, there's everything, there's like people playing metal and there's people, playing pop and there's people playing like weird, noise, electronic stuff and everything in between. And I don't know, it's something in the water, something, I guess. I don't know.
It's good. It would be interesting to know per capita where
Yeah,
Duluth
it does,
sits.
and I grew up in Rochester, which is similar size to Duluth, but I just, and hopefully nobody from Rochester is gonna get mad at me here, but it didn't ever seem like they had quite the strength of the music scene that Duluth has, So that's kind of my metric for it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, because I do a lot for my work, I travel, well, I used to travel through rural Minnesota quite a bit, a lot of small towns. And my colleague always said, if you've been to one small town in Minnesota, you've been to one small town in Minnesota. And Duluth and Rochester, obviously not small towns, but each is unique.
Yeah, different vibes for sure. But Duluth, I think, is my vibe at least.
Nice. Nice. Well, it'll be interesting to see also the impact that you're having on Duluth because you have an unusual sound, which kind of I think might be a time to pivot to some of your earlier work because I think we really would like to hear more about
Yeah.
The climate
Yeah.
sonification.
Yeah. Do you want me just to jump into it or do you have
Love
like
it. Nope.
okay, yeah. Well, one of the things that I had gone when I was in college, I did like a lot of coding and never was like good enough to get a job in that, which I guess is why I'm going to law school, huh? But I
I'm going to use that line so many times with my lawyers and my coding friends. Thank you.
yeah, you can keep that one. But anyway, after a few years ago when I kind of started making music again, like I said, when I was younger, I was in rock bands, but kind of lost that. I like heard about this type of music. It's called generative music, and it's music made using like algorithms or data, which probably sounds horrible just from that description. But it sounded just so weird and like interesting for me to try as somebody who was like a hobby programmer, I guess. So the first thing I did was I like wrote a computer program that like tracked real-time flight patterns and turned it into like notes on a musical scale. And it sounded okay, and I put some like guitars and drums behind it to make it sound like real music. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, but I would like to do something that's more meaningful than just tracking airplanes. So some friends of mine actually in 2019 were doing an art and music pop-up during a film festival in Duluth. And they asked me, well, do you want to do something for it? And I said, well, I think I can come up with something. And so what we did was we did an hour-long performance of climate change data turned to music. So I took the average temperature of the earth for the last 100 years and I turned that into a musical scale. And so you can guess what that sounds like. I mean, it's a pretty linear progression. It starts low and then it gets really high at the end, but we stretched out over an hour. So it was an hour of just slowly rising notes. And then we had some performers kind of improvise over that. And so it made this really cool live performance. And, you could really feel the the notes literally rising, just like the temperatures of the earth rise, to the point where at the end it was like this uncomfortable high pitch, and really, got a reaction out of the audience.
Oh,
And so that kind of inspired me. So I did kind of an album of that, where I turned climate change data into music. So there's one that maps temperature, but there's also a song that does, glacial melts. So the average mass of glaciers every year for the past like 30 years mapped to music. And then, there's a song that does sea levels and carbon dioxide levels. So I just, not that I'm the first person to say that climate change is bad, but, it was fun to, make something that I felt like, had something to say behind it, and you could listen to it and you could kind of hear the climate change. And I tried to use instrumentation on it that kind of evoked that feeling. So sort of like ocean sounding instruments on the sea levels one, and, sort of like air and smoke sounding instruments on the carbon dioxide one. And so I guess I've been talking for a minute here. Should I?
no, keep. I think it's fascinating. Did you do anything for Northern Spark a couple years ago?
No.
No. Okay, there
I
was
think
something.
that might have been, I missed that. It was probably right when I was starting to get into this. So, but I would love to do that when it is a thing again, you know. But so this last album, which I actually just put out in October, so not very far from this one. But for this last album, I wanted to do like a more interactive sort of generative music thing, because I was like, it is cool to hear like the climate change data music, but if you don't know what it is, you're not gonna know it when you hear it. You know what I mean? So I wanted something that had an interactive component to it. So what I did was I wrote some code that there's a website, you can go to it. It's called twoneighborhoods.xyz. And if you go to that website, there's a little map there. And if there's little dots on the map, and those dots are real air monitors that are at people's houses and businesses. And if you click on two of those, it will make music based on the air quality of two of those air monitors. And the idea with that is that air quality is something that is I care about and I'm concerned with, and especially air quality in poorer neighborhoods is often much worse than air quality in more wealthy neighborhoods, usually because poorer neighborhoods are next to highways and factories and oil refineries and things like that. And so the further apart in air quality the two neighborhoods you click on the map are, the more angry the music will sound and the more chaotic the music will sound. And also, if the air quality is worse, it will kind of exacerbate that. So it will make it sound angrier and more chaotic. Whereas if it's nice air quality and the air quality of both neighborhoods is very low, they'll sound very happy and mild and pleasant music. So that's an interactive thing that you can go and you can make your own music with. But then I recorded an album with it. So I kind of took the tool and recorded from it, and then put like drums and some keys behind it to make it sound more like a traditional song. So yeah, that's my generative music thing. And I'm not done with it. But I decided with this most recent album that I wanted to just, try something new. And, for me, music is a hobby of mine. It's not, I don't make money from it, but so I just want to kind of challenge myself and kind of chase these kind of weird ideas that I have. So, I guess I don't have a consistent through line with these things, but I think they're all kind of fun and unique, and hopefully like challenging to listeners in a way that, it's not just music you listen to passively.
I think it's fascinating. I think there's the Science Gallery in Dublin does a lot of this work. And you should look into. I used to live in Dublin, and I used to go to see things that sound so much like what you're talking about. And you'll have to look them up, because I think, and we lived there when my kids were quite young, and I won't pretend like they understood all of it. but it helped me.
Well, and those are sort of the things that stick in people's
Yeah.
memory. Like, it's like I will talk to people about air quality because it's something that I think more people should be aware of. But most people are not interested in air quality. And if you say the air quality is bad today, or, it is bad because the wind is blowing from the direction of that factory over there, most people, they don't really pay attention to it or whatever. But, sometimes the song sticks in their head. And so that might be true, like, with your kids, as they remember, whatever the music was that was teaching them the lesson, and maybe some of the underlying lesson sticks with them. But yeah, there's a ton of people who do this sorts of generative music stuff, and a lot of them are way like smarter than me, and do really amazing complicated things. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that I've done with help from a friend of mine. He plays music under the name Robot Rickshaw in Duluth.
Okay.
But he makes he has a robotic band that plays music. So he programmed this whole robotic band, robot drums and robot singer and robot guitar and all this stuff, and just wild, amazing stuff. But he's given me a lot of feedback and guidance on some of this and direction to go in. But yeah, that the Dublin Museum sounds really cool. And yeah, there's people all over the world that do really wild things with generative music. And so these ideas of mine are kind of my first explorations into it, but I'd love to take it further for sure.
Well, one, you seem like a super smart cookie to me, but I don't. But I also think that there's sometimes people. I work in the tech field. I work with people who are very, very. They have a trouble bringing their ideas all the way to the ground to have someone like me understand it. And I think you do such a good job of making it accessible to a wider audience. And that's where you can affect change.
Well, and I think it is something like, obviously, the people who build and air monitors and do the science of it, they, like you say, they have a hard time communicating with public audiences. But really, if nobody knows what you're doing, it doesn't really matter much. Or that's my view, at least. I don't want to say that it doesn't matter. But, if, again, to really bring it down, if nobody knows the air quality is bad, then how are you going to make it better, right? And so I won't say that, like, my instrument on the internet is going to, fix, air quality and make it suddenly better. But, I think that the idea of it, I have had people talk to me since then, friends of mine who never really interested in what I said about this before, but also people I don't know say, like, wow, I didn't know that the air quality, like, say, in West Duluth was worse than Lakeside all the time. But I go to your thing and it's bad each time I go there, or something like that. And, those are the sorts of ideas that might make people, think about it a little more, and maybe write to their city councilor and say, I don't like that, there's this highway right next to my house, and maybe a city councilor can't move the highway, but you know what I mean? Like, they can start trying to change things and start talking to people who could change things.
Well, and I think I love those examples because, one, when you're working with policy, if you compare yourself to the town next over or to the other side of town, and that speaks to people, like, hey, how come they can breathe and I can't? I mean, it does immediately. But if you and I don't mean, when I say even a legislator, I think a legislator has to know a little bit about a lot. So trying to explain something very technical to them can be difficult because that's not their job. That's not what we hired them to do. But they can hear the difference between angry music and lovely music. And to just, like, hear the difference.
Yeah, and I mean, I would be, something, just since we're on the subject of air quality, and I know this isn't an air quality, show, this is a music show, but I mean, I think it is important to bring up that, people of color are more likely to live in neighborhoods that have poor air quality, mostly due to, policies like redlining, policies that still kind of go on today, even if they're off the books. And people who, make below the poverty line or close to the poverty line are more likely to live in neighborhoods with poor air quality. And those groups of people are also the type of people who are not listened to about these issues, and the groups of people who don't get the same medical treatment. And I have kind of like some quick blurbs of facts on that two neighborhoods website, but living next to or living in an area with even moderately worse air quality does make you more likely to get asthma, cancer, respiratory illness, all sorts of things. And so, I mean, that's my soapbox of it, but I do think it matters. And so maybe, go listen to some air quality music on the website, and maybe you'll get mad about it too.
I think it matters hugely. Well, here's the ironic, my dad as a kid would spend his summers in Duluth because his asthma was so bad in the cities.
Oh,
And he's 70 some years old. It's and
Yeah.
I know I've one kid who has asthma, and it's not as bad in St. Paul as it is in Dublin.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think I think you're doing an amazing. I mean, now I have to make sure everybody knows about this, because I think the interactive and the sound, and that it makes it. People don't need to know, the units of pollution.
Right. Exactly.
They just need to understand this isn't working.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And maybe they'll connect it to the sounds the thing makes, and it helps it. But yeah, so it makes a kind of hard to get your head around idea a little more concrete, a little bit, and so that album that I recorded from it is a little bit different sound than my new one that's coming out tomorrow, because it's almost like a synth wave kind of electronic album, which just, it felt like it fit for the project. And I was working with this electronic instrument and stuff, but yeah.
Well, and I just think it comes back to the name of the music project. This is you've brought the air that we breathe to sound. It's something that's all around us all the time.
Yeah. So it does speak to that sort of diegetic sound, a little bit. Yeah. So it is kind of a serendipitous name, although I said I only picked it because it sounds good. It does seem to, like, you can kind of fit it into those things and make it sound intentional.
I think it found you. We'll say that.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and it's so fascinating to hear about this stuff, but also I think that the Lonely that's coming out tomorrow is just, there's so much to learn kind of from that as well. It's just, as I said, as I read it, I had to think about, it's not much that would give me sympathy for Chauvin. I'll just say that right now. But thinking of being banished and being, I was like, oh, we are all people. We're all,
I would backpedal from that, because that's really not the message that
it's not at all the message. And I don't mean to say that at all. No, I'm sorry. I do not mean to say that at all, but but it was very much a reminder of we are all human. We're all.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think it just speaks nicely to sort of the sorts of plots we like to see in movies and stuff like that, which we do enjoy, sort of the story of the anti-hero. And so, the Twilight Zone episode follows the guy who is banished to, a distant planet, even though, you don't know what he did, but he must have done something wrong, we would assume, in the movie. Or, so many other, films that we watch follow the bad guy. And it is fun in film to do that, because it is, it's fun to put ourselves in that position, I think, in fiction. So, and I think it sits well in like the sort of B movie sound I was trying to go to it. So it's like this vintage, like, bad movie that you would see not at the normal movie theater, but at, the like $3 movie theater that gets the movies like 2 months later and stuff like that. So that sort of plot speaks to me. And also, I probably couldn't write a more complicated one. So there you go. Yeah.
That's okay. We got time to think it through these days. But there is
Yeah.
it is that retro futuristic that has such a great appeal.
Yeah, I agree. Um, and I don't know, I'd like to do more of that in the future, but I'd also like to do more of the sort of generative music stuff. But I will admit that the generative music stuff takes a lot more planning and thinking. So it was a nice break. Um, this was a nice break from that because I didn't have to code anything and I didn't have to go find data and make it fit and stuff like that. So that's kind of the headache part of it. But kind of, you know, I think for some people the creative process is about like breaking out of a box. But for me, I feel like the creative process is like putting myself in a box and then working in it. So, you know, I start with like, I'm going to make music out of air quality data. And then I have to figure out how to do that. Or I say, I'm going to make an album about, you know, a 25-minute Twilight Zone episode. Um, and then I have to do that. But for some reason, putting the limitations on makes it more doable rather than like feeling like I'm fighting against something.
Yeah.
More structure.
Yeah, and
for
I
your-
guess I'm a structured person. Yeah.
Yeah. Will you piece together any sort of video for your new concept album here?
Um, you know, I
Have,
don't know. It's so
that's okay.
hard. I would like to do video stuff because I think that's what people like to consume. Um, I'd like to, you know, I'd love to have, you know, somebody who wanted to do it, but you know, people should get paid for their work, so it's hard. Um, you know, right now I'm working on, as the world slowly comes back, like figuring out how to do it live as kind of a one-man band sort of situation. Um, so you know, I've been doing, and I might set up some live stream stuff coming up here. Um, but I've been like kind of working on the live performance aspect of it right now before I think about the video. So, you know, I've been doing like lot. I don't know if you've ever seen other people do it, but you know, like live looping sort of
Yeah.
stuff where you kind of play a part and record that and then play over that part. So I think that that's what the sort of next phase is getting that live performance to look good and sound good and not look like just one person standing there or sound like one person standing there at least.
I think that will be fantastic. I've seen more of it, and I think going back to what you did for the two, well, the impetus of the two neighborhoods. You said there was an event where for an hour you tracked the temperature of, you know, and have some improv folk. That would be,
Yeah, I would love to do more of that sort of community stuff. And, you know, there's some friends of mine up here and they had really done a lot of great work before and during the pandemic to create sort of an arts collective space that kind of fostered those ideas. And I guess I should credit them, but their sort of organization is called the Embassy.
nice.
And they're the ones that did the pop-up arts collective. And they've been doing really wonderful live stream shows through the whole pandemic. But we did sort of, you know, I didn't even mention, but we did sort of a live improv with the air quality data too, where we kind of took in real time air quality data for a performance and had people improv over that as well. So yeah, I'd love to do more of that again when it's possible to have us all stand in a room together and do it,
Yeah.
hopefully soon, you know. But yeah, they do great work. So I mean, you know, check them out too, especially if you just want to watch some high quality live streams. They've been doing some really good work with that.
Nice. How there's a lot. I mean, because you guys have a lot of stars up there in northern Minnesota. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
stars.
we went back to it. Oh, you're talking about stars like making music from the star data. Oh,
Or even just do the lonely, but do it looking at the starscape.
oh yeah, that's a great idea. That would be fun. You know, I actually was trying to at one point for this album, I was like, well, I should do one song that's generative music, you know, to acknowledge that. So I was gonna do a song that like took star locations and mapped it to music, I never could get that to work out because it turns out that stars move in a circle. So it just sounds like the same thing over and over again. Um, I could come up with something with it maybe, but it didn't work out for this project. So I gave up on it.
It sounds like you could just call that song the chorus, just over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just the same thing the whole time for, 10 minutes, and we'll see if anyone makes it to the end,
There's some places you could do that. You're fascinating. It's just really interesting to hear all of the stuff that you have music as a tool. Fascinating.
Yeah. I think that a lot of musicians probably do that, or do stuff like that. For me, when I was younger, I played in like really loud, fast bands, and stuff like that. And that's really fun too. And, I'd like to do that again one day, but what happens is life happens and it gets a lot harder to like get 4 people on different schedules in a room together at the same time, and especially when, like I said, I have a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah.
And so you just have to find ways to do that on your own. Although I would love to do band stuff again one day, but I think a lot of musicians kind of use music as a tool to kind of further their other ideas. And, a lot of musicians doing really great work of incorporating, video and music, of course, but also like incorporating other mixed medias and music and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think there's nothing I would like more than to see a loud, fast band, specifically at the Turf Club. I have a very vision of what I want to go back to, but but I'd like to see them if I can be dancing. I don't want to sit in the back. I'm like at the whole, I think everybody's got there. What will you do the minute, the pandemic is over? Well, there's not going to be a minute where it's over. So I think that this music to me is super interesting in a different way. I'm just as happy to sit and listen to this, and that it is experiential enough without having to dance. And for me to say that is a big deal because I'm a big dancer, but I think because the idea of people dancing en masse is we're ways from that.
Yeah. That's high praise for sure. And, I just, I almost think this has become a bit of a cliche too. Hopefully it's not yet, but like everyone has like their COVID album. And I guess this one is mine because I did, work on it because of it. But it's certainly, like probably many musicians, has sort of that sort of isolation vibe to it. Just from the name. And in fact, I think when I mentioned to my partner, yeah, I'm calling this The Lonely, I think she said, "Oh, sad," was her response to it, like in reference, thinking it was in reference to the pandemic. And it probably was, but I just subconsciously, so it definitely has those vibes to it. But I think that it is something, especially because it is instrumental, I think it is something that can exist beyond the pandemic, as not you won't listen to it and think this must have been recorded in 2020. Probably more likely you'll listen to it and think this must have been recorded in like 1979 or something, which isn't I think that could be cool awesome too. So it definitely has that vibe. But yes, I too, like you said, would love to go and listen to a loud band and dance around and leave smelling like beer because it all gets thrown on you. And that will be very nice. That will be the thing that I will like to do the minute it is possible, is go see some loud bands play fast music out of tune. Will be very nice.
Absolutely.
You're very specific.
Yeah, well, we have to represent the bands playing out of tune. They're an underrepresented demographic, but important.
I was gonna say, I don't know if they're always underrepresented. It depends where you're going.
No. Depends on the bar you go to, I guess.
And what's in the hour and the
Yeah.
that'll be your next is the auto tune.
Yeah. The concept is that it's music played badly. Actually, I was just listening. Somebody recorded, they took a poll they polled like a whole bunch of people of like, what is the things you hate most in music? I should have the name of the artist down, but I don't. But um, so they made like a 20-minute long song called The Worst Song Ever. And it's just incorporates all these things that people said they hated the most. And you can check it out on Spotify. It actually, it doesn't sound half bad. It's got like children singing Christmas music and gongs and, you know, just a whole bunch of like terrible tropes of music. But then I think to prove the point or to kind of finish the thesis, they also made the best song ever, which is they also polled people on what are the things they like most in music. And that song is terrible.
Oh,
You just, turns out that public comment isn't the best way to write a song.
no. I thought you were gonna say it had children singing Christmas songs. It had
Yeah.
It had the same things in it. Yeah, yeah.
It's
Same song played backwards.
Yeah. That's funny. That's funny. Well, I'm excited that the album is coming out. I really both Heather and I kind of called each other like, "Whoa, this is."
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, I'm excited too. And a little bit like feeling like I have to start on the next thing, which I don't know what. So, but I'm happy. I feel good about it. It feels like the most complete work that I've made and the most, I don't know if I want to say polished, but definitely my strongest piece. So, yeah, it's out tomorrow, Friday, the 26th. So I guess I don't know when this is coming out. That might have already happened. But out the 26th. And yeah, you can find it on Spotify and Bandcamp and all the places and stuff. And it's free to download too. Like I said, I do this as a hobby. So I'm not really, if people want to buy it, they should buy something from like a working musician and just, download this,
That is a generous thought. This you said you're in law school. Do you do you consider not do you consider going to music law, but do you think of ways that music can affect change with the things you're learning in law school?
Well, I went to law school because, I'm also big into politics and social change and activism. And, I want, to do that work to try to, help people. Before, all this, I spent some time like working an office job where I just felt like I moved papers around my desk all day. And it just felt so like not meaningful to me that I was like, I got to do something that actually maybe helps somebody day to day or something, which is what got me there. But I think that, music does do that. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a cliche thing to say, but I think especially in like the last year, you have seen so many musicians step up to the plate, musicians holding, rallies for candidates for office and musicians, running voter drives, musicians running benefits for, both pandemic related stuff and, Black Lives Matter stuff and social issues. And I mean, in a lot of ways, like the things that musicians can do, popular ones are a lot more effective than what maybe a lawyer or a politician can do sometimes, because they can energize so many people and point so many people towards something. So I mean, I think there's an overlap there. I think also that this might be the more controversial take, which is that like a lot of the skills for music, in my view, are not that different from like the skills that you need to work in a legal field, in that you have to look at complex problems and solve them. And there's usually not a correct way to solve it. There's the way that you would solve it, So I think that a lot of the thinking actually overlaps.
I think you're right. That's what makes you innovative. That's what will make you a good lawyer, whatever you choose to do with it. And that's what makes you a super interesting, a good musician. I like that. I think you're right too. I remember when Taylor Swift said she was voting, registered to vote now, and just, which is awesome.
Yeah, and just no matter what you think of Taylor Swift's music, I mean, I think she's pretty good actually, but no matter what you think of her music, like her saying she was voting probably did more to register young people to vote than like a lot of like real political outreach groups did. And there's a lot of power to that.
Which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I'm thinking, oh, you could do work with the sound quality or climate quality in line 3 and
yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so
hours.
many ideas with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd love that is a good direction to go in. I like that idea. So I don't know, maybe next year that'll be the thing.
That'll be your thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I don't, see myself like you had asked, like, will you work in music as a lawyer? I don't see me doing that.
No.
Personally, yeah. So far, I shouldn't say this. It's probably gonna like lose me some internship at some point, but no, I'm just kidding. But not a big fan of contract law myself. Not very excited by it. And I think that's a lot of what you do representing musicians is contracts. So
yeah.
I unfortunately disqualified myself from that field already.
Just now?
Yeah, maybe.
It's funny because I would think with the coding, I mean, it's attention to detail. Well, okay. First you gotta
I can't justify it. You're right. It should fit. Something about it though.
It was wait, and it's not a new line, but my grandpa always said, say, first you gotta wanna. And that's what you're doing, I think, so much with the sound quality, I keep saying song with the climate quality and the sonification and that. I mean, you're getting people to want, once you wanna, you can do anything.
Yeah, and it is almost something that, people just say, but it is true. I mean, I'm a big believer in like less about innate talent and more about practice, even music wise. I don't think I have ever been like an innately talented musician. Some may argue still not talented, but no. But if you practice, you can get good at it. It's like people, if you tell a kid they're good at math, they will be good at math. And if you tell them that they're not good at math, then they won't be good at it. Yeah. I don't think, I think it's just more about what you devote yourself to. But yeah, I can't see myself devoting myself to contracts. No, so
that's good. That's good. Somebody else, give that to somebody else who wants to do it.
Yeah, some people are really passionate about it. More power to them. I don't see it. But that's cool. That's great.
That's good. That means we all want to buy a different house. We all want to go a different place. That makes it so. And I'm glad that you do what you do, because I find what you do just to be absolutely fascinating. For the Lonely that's coming out tomorrow is the amount of time I've spent thinking about it, and especially and I like instrumentals, but usually you catch on to a lyric or something. I've thought about the music, and it is very much you get the feels across
the through line. Oh, that's great. I mean, that's really very fun to hear. So thank you. Yeah. And yeah, I like instrumental music too. I think that a lot of why I like it is because you can listen to it in the background of things.
Absolutely.
But it's got to have a hook still. Just like it can't just be like music ready for somebody else to sing over. If you're gonna put it out as instrumental, it still needs to fill that space. It still needs to catch people. And so I think that is hard to do sometimes, because really what that means is like, kind of progressing and moving and changing the song. And you're probably not going to have a chorus that you repeat 3 times unless it's really, really good or something in an instrumental song. Cause there's not that lyrical hook to grab people. So you got to do something else to do it. So that can be the challenge sometimes too.
Yeah, no, that's a thoughtful way to think of it.
Yeah.
it brings me back to many of the noise shows that I used to go to see. You go to something like that because it's the interest level, and you want to hear something different. And that's what I think with this. You're not going to hear a chorus.
Absolutely. Yeah. I remember, and that is one thing I do miss about Minneapolis is like going to some venue on a Saturday night and hearing some band that you've never heard before, and they're playing some weird music, and sometimes it is just like totally off-putting. But the thing that I always loved about it was like, well, I have not heard it before, um, I I just like at least they're doing something different, and that I respect and that I really enjoy. Like if you're doing something up there that I haven't seen, you know, no offense to cover bands, but like I don't want to hear the same song. I want to hear your song on a different night.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I feel, give me something I love or give me a train wreck, and I can enjoy a train
Yeah,
like nobody's business. And I've seen some train wrecks, and I've just been like that. I will do that every day, twice on Sunday, man. That was fun. It was, just in
absolutely.
high volume, high screeching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
me too. Yes. Some of the best shows. So yeah, that's another one on the list after COVID is, you know, train wreck noise show. Yeah. Let's book it,
and we can't even name the venues we could because we're not FCC right now, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
We'll see what
Cool.
opens up after it. Awesome.
Yeah. I'm
Awesome.
sure we all have a few in our minds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell people who are listening where they can find you online. This will go up tonight. People may not listen to it until a few days from now, but it will go up tonight. But tell people where they can find you online.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So, I mean, probably the easiest place if you want to listen to my music is diegetic.bandcamp.com. And then, you can find me on Spotify just by searching my name. I do have a Twitter, although I'll admit that I don't really tweet about music that much. But maybe that's better. I don't know. But my Twitter handle is DiegeticMN. So like the word Diegetic and then the letters M and N for Minnesota. Again, probably more about Duluth and politics than music, but there's some music in there. And I did tweet. I guess I kind of forgot to mention this before, but I might do this again. Last year, I think I went January to January. I did tweet a Minnesota band every day for a year. So I found an album from a Minnesota band, usually that came out in the last year. So it was something new, and tweeted about it. And I tried to avoid like the popular ones. I tried to go for like DIY bands that you hadn't heard of, or bands that are trying to make it. So I tweeted a band every day for a year. So that's on my Twitter. And maybe I'll try that again. But I've needed a couple month hiatus to recover from it. So that's probably enough plugs.
I love that. You and I will have to come up with a challenge because I tweet a women's birthday a day. And I started this January, and we'll take it to next January. But between the two of us, we could, it's fun.
That would be fun. And you know what? You think that you would run. I was a little nervous when I started it that I would run out of Minnesota bands like halfway through, or like have to go back. And I did do like 2 albums for some because it was like they just came out with a new album and it was so good that of course I had to. But I mean, there's so many good bands in Minnesota that you can easily do 365 Minnesota musicians in a year.
Are there any standouts that you're like, I would have never learned about these guys and now I do?
Well, so many. And I do have on Spotify, I tried to make a playlist of them.
Oh, awesome.
But a few like highlight reels. First of all, they're pretty popular in Minneapolis now, but I hadn't heard of them somehow. Trita, they do like post metal. They're pretty good. There's a band out of Rochester called Local Sports. They do kind of fast, catchy pop punk songs. Really great stuff. There's a solo musician, solo/band musician named Dennis out of Minneapolis. She does like kind of pop music. Very, very nice. Those were kind of 3 highlights I can think of off the top of my head. But I mean, there's so many. So if you find me on Spotify, my artist page on Spotify, you'll see there's a playlist there called A Year of Minnesota Listens. And it has most of the bands that I listen to, not all of them because not everybody's on Spotify, but there's like 300 bands there. So it's pretty close.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, because we're gonna find a bunch that we haven't heard before, and that's amazing. That's a gift.
Yeah, lots of fodder for like Minnesota focused music stuff. Like, so many good bands that need more people to listen to them.
Yeah, well, thank you for lifting them up, and thank you for your work. Tomorrow I will be sitting by myself listening to The Lonely while I work.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. I mean, this was really, really fun. Talking to folks is a little rare these days. So this is great. It is. Well, thank you. Yeah. Have a good